Welcome everybody. This is the monthly WordPress presentation. And last week we had our kind of open mic night where we kind of helped out a couple folks. One person had some problems with her WooCommerce account, so we helped kind of clean that up for her, and that was pretty cool. Today we've got Lindsay, and she is from Colorado, Lindsay Halsey, and she is one of the co-founders of Pathfinder SEO. So happy that she could join us. I actually, full disclosure, she's one of my vendors. I use her and her co-founder, Eric, on a regular basis. But I do want to mention that we still have our sponsors. You don't want to forget these guys. We've got Black Sheep Agency. Black Sheep Agency is fiercely dedicated to serving our community. We strive to organize an army of co-conspirators who share a common vision. Fort Bend Chamber as well, and they are a chamber that inspires, enhances, and promotes thriving economic environment in which we work and live. We also have Nixie Host, and they are a local hosting company, and I don't have their snippet with me, but Nixie Host is NIXIHost.com. They're here in Houston, so highly recommend checking them out. They've got some really good WordPress packages for hosting. And then my company, Global Specs, is an exclusive digital marketing company working with B2B companies. Most of our customers are oil and gas, construction, engineering, chemical, and we believe in the small business owners and their tireless dedication to their craft. We believe every business has something great to offer, and we just want to make sure everyone knows it too. So a little bit, some news. We did have WordPress drop 5.6, dropped a couple weeks ago-ish, January 5th. So again, this is one of those things that you want to make sure you update, back up first, back up, always back up before you update, especially when you're going to this 5.5 to 5.6, really just back up anyway. I don't see that it's a security update, but they are updating some of the jQuery. They added more blocks to Gutenberg, a little more layout flexibility. So if you are using Gutenberg blocks, something to think about. And they added application passwords for your API. So just looks like they're making a lot of changes here. State of the Word also happens. If you go to the wordpress.org/news, you can watch State of the Word. If you're interested in listening to Matt Mullenweg talk about what his vision is for WordPress. And other news, I believe Gutenberg was helped. I'm losing the track of here. 9.5 to 9.6 was released, so that's good. Also, I'm trying to remember, I need you guys, I'm going to try and remind you, I'm going to throw it in the chat. I've got a topic survey. So I'm trying to get as many people to give me some ideas on what they want us to present every month. And I would love to get y'all's feedback. I have a Survey Monkey, so I'm going to throw it in the chat. If you guys can take a moment, it's literally like 20 seconds to fill this out. This should take you no time whatsoever. So just take a second and fill it out. It helps me kind of organize for the year and figure out what people are interested in. I know obviously SEO is one of the bigger topics. So, obviously, because I don't know about you, but I love SEO. I think it's a fabulous, very interesting topic, and there's so much that we can learn. We do have a YouTube channel. So if you missed last month's topic, I just posted it, I believe, early Monday, and that should be on the YouTube channel. That was where we talked about optimizing your dashboard, and we had some good presentation, and she gave us some really great tips on how to do that. So anyone else have any news that they want to share? Anything that they've really want to make sure everyone knows about? No.
Did you send your survey request out to the meetup?
Not yet, but I will in a second.
Send it out.
Thanks, Rick.
All the members. There's like 2,000 plus members. So
yes. If I can get some folks onto Facebook too, that would be great too, because I'm not so much doing the comments and stuff on, but we do have a Facebook group and we got a Facebook page, so we do announcements there. Also, if you have, today somebody called me, they needed some help with their blog, It's not something that I would do. So I recommended he go to the Facebook group and post his request, just so we can, there's other freelancers, other agencies that might be more interested in doing that type of work. So if you haven't yet, I recommend going into the Facebook group and asking for help or asking questions, and then vice versa, if you're a freelancer, you know, getting in there and helping some of those other WordPress users in the Houston area. So, but all right, needless to say, Lindsay, whenever you're ready, let me properly introduce you. So Lindsay is out of Basalt, Colorado. Like I mentioned, she's co-founder of Pathfinder SEO and partner of WebShine, a search engine marketing agency. Lindsay enjoys teaching freelancers and agencies SEO processes that can apply to their business and grow reoccurring revenue by offering SEO services. Like I said, I love it. I get coaching twice a month. Somebody hops on a call and we just go through our different campaigns and projects. It's just nice to get a third party coming in and just kind of going through things that we don't notice. So it's super nice on that, but it's also just great to have someone with that knowledge and skill level to kind of bounce ideas off of. So
yeah, I'm going to right now.
Who's talking? We're going to mute them. All right, so Lindsay, I'm going to give you control.
Awesome. Well,
So
thanks
if you'd
everyone,
like-
and thanks for the very overly generous introduction. And I'm so excited to speak with you all tonight. I'd love to keep tonight as interactive as possible. I know we all wish we were in one space, in one place together. And so I'll walk through a slide deck, but don't hesitate to ask questions as we go. And then of course, at the end, you can kind of ask me anything about SEO. It doesn't have to be perfectly on point with what we cover here today. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen and get into the present mode. So tonight we're really going to focus on SEO strategy for 2021. And obviously it's timely because here we are in January. And what I hope you can walk away from this presentation with is a really clear understanding of how you can prioritize your time for impact and generate results. So when I ask most people about their impressions of SEO or experience with SEO, I hear a couple different phrases over and over. And this doesn't matter if you're a site owner, freelancer, agency. A lot of people feel like SEO is always changing. And it is a dynamic landscape. There's no question. But I think when I think about the 10 or so years I've been working in SEO, I've really noticed that it more evolves than actually changes. And so what we talk about tonight in terms of strategy isn't going to be necessarily brand new to you. It's just going to reinforce a lot of what you might already know about SEO and give you that encouragement to go and take the next step and to really act on these everyday strategic tactics that worked a year ago and are going to work again in 2021. We hear a lot of people say SEO is expensive. This can be for a myriad of reasons. One is people can invest a lot of time learning SEO and not always a lot of time doing the actions that lead to growth and revenue and traffic. And that makes SEO expensive from a time standpoint. Other people's experience with SEO is it's expensive because they paid an agency and maybe they didn't get value. But that's definitely a common thread. And then a lot of people in this junction feel like, well, I'm just not an SEO expert. And this feels like one of those topics where you can't even really bridge the gap on SEO unless you have a certain level of expertise. And we're going to overcome a lot of these barriers tonight. And we're going to focus on a way of doing that, which we consider a process-based approach to SEO. So when I talk about a process-based approach to SEO, you're probably thinking a lot about, if you're a web designer or developer, the process you follow to build and maintain a website. If you run your own business and you're not offering professional services around web design and you're a site owner, you probably deploy a lot of different processes in your business to deliver your service, your expertise, or your product. And in SEO, we often think about this as taking a step-by-step approach. SEO is really a series of a lot of small actions that add up into the deployment of a larger strategy and lead to growth. And so one of those small steps that a lot of us take on an ongoing basis is writing a blog post. Another would be acquiring a new review on Google Maps. Another would be getting out there in the world, being a guest on a podcast, a webinar, presenting, all of these kind of actions. And then we cycle back around and we really analyze the results. And so when I think about sitting down to focus on SEO in 2021, you're actually not spending a lot of your time doing the nitty gritty things like responding to page not found errors or 301 redirects or fixing your XML sitemap. That's kind of classical SEO activity. A lot of what you're doing is creating content, generating positive goodwill in terms of Google Maps and reviews, getting out there in the world and building some backlinks and authority into your website. And it's this series of small actions that's done over and over again that ends up delivering long-term growth. And really, it's your long-term capital. Because while SEO doesn't necessarily, it's not a set it and forget it initiative, it does have a lot of building momentum over time. And so there is long-term value, and what you do today is going to pay dividends in the months and years ahead. And when I really think about SEO and take a step back and I look at, well, what websites do really well with organic traffic and growth, I see that they have really three things in common. And this doesn't matter if you're a local business with a 5-page website or an enterprise level e-commerce website with thousands and thousands of products. Really what all these businesses have in common is that they share their expertise, they have strong online authority, and they engender trust. And so when I think about a strategy that encompasses these, that's where I really think about what a holistic SEO strategy looks like. It looks like working in all three of these spheres and taking those small steps to build and make these circles bigger and to grow them over time. And so today, we're going to focus on a strategic plan for 2021 that really focuses on each one of these elements and maybe takes a little bit of a twist of how you think like, okay, great, we know content is really important for SEO. And let's take it a little further and talk about what we can do a little differently this year than maybe we've done in years past. So when I think about the concept of sharing your expertise online, it comes down to content. Written content, video content, visual content, images, all of these things are how you share the expertise that you have in your business with the online world. And it's the backbone of really SEO. You've probably heard the phrase content is king when it comes to SEO. So it's all about content. And for many, many years, the focus of content marketing for SEO has been around blogging. So you think about blogging strategy, think about, do you even need to blog? How often? How long do your posts need to be? And what do I write about? And that's really the common dynamic that we think about when we think about creating content to excel in SEO. But there are actually a lot of ways to share your expertise online. So you have your website, and this is going to be the hub of where you share your expertise. And it's not just blog posts that actually share expertise. It's your homepage. It's your services pages. It's actually your contact page. All of your content types together can be organic landing pages and have opportunity for growth. And so when I think about content on a website, I don't run straight to somebody's blog actually to evaluate their SEO related content. I click through all of the main navigation pieces and I say, okay, if they're a big blogger, what do their category pages look like? What do the services pages look like for a services-based company, or a product page look like on an e-commerce website? So all of your content really matters on your website. And then there are a lot of ways that you can share this expertise off your website: email marketing, social media, YouTube, guest blogging, guest podcasting, webinars. These are all ways online to share your expertise and to build those signals for Google that your business is an expert in a really defined space. And that's what they value. Because at the end, go ahead.
Category. I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I ask about the category thing? Like, are categories, you think from an SEO's perspective, are those super important? Like, do you want to build up your categories, or you want to use, because I know some people use their categories like they use tags. So like, how important are your categories?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So categories can be applied obviously to blog posts. They can also be applied to categorization of like product on an e-commerce website. So you can utilize categories in a lot of ways. And what categories let us do is it's taxonomy, right? So it lets us sort information and show, hey, this is all of my content that's related to, say, WordPress SEO, and this is all of my content that's related to Squarespace SEO. So, right, I can differentiate these two. And your category pages are as good as the content on them. So let's say I have a blog with 10 blog posts on it, and then I have 5 categories. If I only put a blog post in any one category, then each category really only has 2 posts in it. So the actual category, it's pretty thin, right? It doesn't share a lot of expertise. I have 2 blog posts about one topic, and I'm making the search engines crawl and index this category page, which is pretty weak. On the other hand, what if I had a blog with 100 pages on it and 5 categories, or 100 posts on it and 5 categories? Each one of those category pages had like a nice intro at the beginning, maybe even a video, and then had the respective like, hey, here are my 20 posts that are related to this topic. Now that category page starts to feel pretty rich. And the same can be true for like e-commerce. So if you have 10 products and you have 10 category pages, then your categories and your products are almost one and the same. And so there was a time where in WordPress, an SEO tactic was to do a lot of categorization because it kind of blew up the size of your website. And one of the ways we thought of expertise being shared was size of website in terms of SEO. And now that just wastes crawler bandwidth, the search engine's bandwidth. And so now you want to use categories, but use them really purposely and actually put time and effort into those category pages. Does that help? Awesome. So when we think about great content, we really start to think about content on our website, because that is ultimately the backbone of our SEO-oriented content. I think about really 4 different pieces that I use to evaluate great content from an SEO standpoint. The first is keyword focus. So the words and phrases that your audience use to search for a topic, the how, the what, the where, the when, the why, the comparisons, all of these keywords need to be in a piece of content that you want to rank for that space. So you can't get a page about dogs to rank for a keyword about cats. It just doesn't work. It doesn't mean you need to stuff a page with keywords, but there does need to be some intent there. So that's one of the first ingredients to SEO success with content. The next is user experience. Google's putting more and more weight on user experience and the signals. It's much harder for them to measure than keyword focus, because right, they just crawl the content and they use studying of language to say, okay, these phrases are used, and they can build a picture of the content. But user experience is super important. Like, have you gone to a contact page for a hardware store and it didn't have hours of operation, and you're like, ugh, this doesn't help me. And then you go back and you have to find the listing on Google Maps, and then you're like, yeah, is it really up to date? All I want to know is the hours of operation, and I can't find this information out on this website. That's poor user experience, and Google can measure and understand that. Another example would be like, you go to an e-commerce product page and you don't find reviews, right? And you're like, I'm really close to hitting buy now, but I don't even see like a single review on this page. For a services business, we'd be thinking about lacking of testimonials or a case study. These are all the ingredients of success, and there's different ingredients of success for different page types that make us, as visitors, have a positive user experience. And so sometimes when I'm evaluating content, I'm actually going back and being just like that second set of eyes that's like, ooh, we're missing this like really important part of this type of a landing page. And so thinking about user experience and those signals is a big part of good content. The next is structure. And tonight we're going to spend more time talking about structure. And that is basically breaking our content into sections with clearly defined headers, bullet points, images, and more. This correlates with user experience, right? The ability to like scan through a piece of content and actually engender information out of it very quickly without having to read every word. But structure matters a lot. And then the speed component. You may have heard there's a core algorithm update coming, meaning it's going to impact the whole of the internet, essentially, on Google. It'll impact all sectors. It's not just targeting one industry or another. And that core algorithm update focuses on core web vitals. And core web vitals have to do with user experience. A lot of them have to do with speed, because speed is a big component of that. And I've put in here the phrase that it needs to load reasonably fast, which is somewhat vague. And the reason I say reasonably fast is because obviously it needs to load fast enough that somebody doesn't bounce or not want to make a purchase because your website is so sluggish, or a page is so sluggish to load. But Google's algorithms, for as much as they say speed matters, it's not as sensitive to speed as I would have thought. So when you talk to SEOs who have run experiments, put a lot of time and investment into improving speed, they get better visitor experience out of it, but they don't always see a traffic bump. Come May 2021, Google is going to start rewarding speed more. I don't think they're necessarily going to penalize you for sluggish speed, but I do think there's going to be more of a reward metric in there. And they've given us a ton of lead time. They actually started talking about core web vitals a long time ago. And you can see your core web vitals in the Google Search Console. And so normally in things in life, we all target greatness, right? So we're like, I'm going to create great content. And speed is the one thing where I find myself telling a lot of my customers, greatness is going to be really hard to achieve, like getting into the green, getting, you know, a 91 out of 100 on the page speed insights in Google. It's going to like be really costly. And I don't think the benefit is going to be there for most businesses, not for everyone, of course. And so when it comes to speed, we actually just want to be in the middle of the pile. And so this is going to be where you'll get different advice from different people, but I'm calling speed good enough when it gets into that middle threshold. And so that's just a little preview of what's to come this year on the speed side. And I'm not a WordPress speed optimization expert. I do think if you're looking for topics, I don't know, I'll have to think if I can think of a good speaker, but that would be a really good topic, especially as we move towards May and we start to hear about this core web vitals update coming into stronger play.
Yeah, the hard thing about speed is I get our clients that they go to Lighthouse or they go to GT Metrics and they see the dials, right? And they see the score, and they, especially Google's speed performance, and it's 90 or it's like 10 or it's like 30, and like I gotta get to 100. I'm like, dude, do you have any idea what that's going to mean? Because you've got your chat on there, you've got your couple third-party widgets in there. We'd have to get rid of them. Like you'd have to get rid of them to get to that point. And it's really hard to convince them that that perfect score is it's not unachievable, but it is expensive and you're going to have to let go of a few things. And I'm like, you're under 2 seconds. We're good. You know, mobile and desktop, we're under 2 seconds loading. So
I would echo that. And it's that cost benefit analysis that you have to walk people through of, is the value of the speed worth the removal of a piece of functionality or the expense invested to take this up the next level? And from having pushed some clients quite hard on speed over the last year or two, I can tell you that every time I do it, I'm like, you know, we pushed hard and we made these improvements. And we didn't see a huge uptick in e-commerce conversion rates or just normal conversion rates. We didn't see a huge increase in organic traffic. And so that's where that speed, you know, good is good enough. And sometimes looking at the competitive set can be helpful there too. If you're in a kind of competitive space and you're like, okay, well, how does my site compare to 5 other folks in this industry space? And the site is on par with it, then I'd move on and focus my attention elsewhere. So another place that people get pretty focused in addition to speed, and you'll see that in my list of what makes great content, I actually didn't mention length, even though the average first page result on Google, and I think this was in 2019, includes about more than 2,000 words of content. So a lot of what Google looks for in terms of expertise is length of content. And that makes sense because the more I write about a topic, let's say I write 2,000 words about XML sitemaps on WordPress, that content probably shares more expertise than another post with only 500 words. But the length of the content alone doesn't actually dictate anything. So I just grabbed this from a doc that I was working on when I was writing a blog post, and you can see that in 2 seconds of it being on the screen, you get nothing out of it. And if I organize my content with some structure, you quickly understand that I've given it a title, I've given it a little intro, I have sort of my agenda or what I'm going to talk about in the post, and then I actually break down and I have my H2 there, my why the change to Google Analytics 4. And so when we structure our content on a page, we create better user experience, but we also give Google a really quick snapshot of what a post is about, and we make certain keywords really pop out more than others. So you would be remiss if you missed Google Analytics 4 as being like a core keyword on this, because it's everywhere. And it's in different contexts. It's in all of the ways that people are searching for the topic. They're searching for the why, the how, the what, the when, and they're trying to understand a new thing. And so to create definitive content, it's not so much about writing 2,000 words. In a lot of ways, it's about breaking it down into its component parts. And so my encouragement, or first kind of tip for you for 2021, is to really think hard and work at your structure, your page structure, because Google gets so much information about your header structure and the words and phrases that are included in here. When I'm thinking about structure on a topic, the first thing that I like to do is explode the topic. So if I'm going to write a blog post or create a landing page about any content, I start with answer the public, and I put in like a 2 to 3 word phrase. It's a free tool to a certain limit, but for most everyday practitioners, you'll be able to use this for free. And it puts this huge circle out there of all of the phrases out there in a qualitative approach. So there's no numbers in here that people are searching for online. And you have questions, you end up with prepositions, and then a lot of comparisons. And this is really helpful when in both scenarios. In some scenarios, I'm already the expert on the topic, right? I'm doing SEO for my own website. So I know a lot about Google Analytics, but sometimes I'm so close to that expertise, I would forget the basic, what is Google Analytics? Or who uses Google Analytics? Like, I'm too close. And so I use this to make sure that I take that step back from the topic and I think about it from a beginner's standpoint or from an intermediate person standpoint with the topic. Then on the other hand, sometimes I'm working on doing an outline for a client, right? I'm trying to coach them in content, or maybe I'm going to write the content myself, and it's on a topic I know nothing about. So I have to start with the answer to the public, because I don't even always know the vocabulary that I'm dealing with. So start by exploding your topics, and just start a random list. And so I just go through that. Not every question and answer and all the different things on there are going to be applicable to you, but you're going to come out of that with just kind of an unordered list that's a little sloppy. And out of that, I can then turn it into an outline where I'm like, okay, I'm going to take my core keyword, Google Analytics for WordPress, and I'm going to break it down into the what, the who, the how, the plugin question, which we always have. And then I might have a series of FAQs at the end of my post that allow me to kind of hook into a handful of different topics and jump around. And at the end of the day, if I follow this outline, I'll probably end up with a 2,000 word post, but it's going to be really well structured. And it is going to be definitive. It is going to be the kind of content that shares a depth of expertise. Then, now I have my headers, essentially. The content that goes right below the headers, in SEO talk, we call this snippet bait. So snippet bait is the quick answer to a question that could be easily extracted from the page and shown directly on Google. And so when I'm writing answers to, or right below headers in general, if there's an SEO opportunity in the header, as there would be in this example, I'm trying to make sure that I answer this in a way that Google could just grab my answer and plug it right into Google. And then I can unpack the topic in a lot of detail below it. So it's like, be really direct up front and then expand on this. You don't want your 1 sentence or your 2 sentence answer to be buried in paragraph 3 under a header, because it makes it kind of hard to find. And it's not as direct of a writing style as Google really resonates with. And what this can do for you is it can allow you to compete in these types of featured snippets. In this case, I have a Google search with a Googled featured snippet, so it's a hard one to compete with because they're probably not going to pick my blog post over their help documentation. But you'll start to see these all over the place if you haven't already. And these featured snippets are just a really great opportunity to share your expertise directly on google.com, which is awesome. So really the first and my probably biggest tip of the day is to focus on the structure of your content in 2021. And to listen what that looks like in like the real world. I just finished doing an SEO audit for a client, and this client has about 30 really good blog posts sort of organized in a resource center on their website. And it doesn't generate, for its quality of the content, it doesn't generate as much traffic as I would have thought it did, because they really have shared a lot of expertise over time to get this kind of body of 30 long blog posts on their website. And so I started flipping through all of the blog posts, and I noticed something, and that is not one of them uses anything more than an H1, right? All they have is the title of the post, and then they have paragraph, 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 paragraph. So for a client in that situation, I'm not encouraging or working as much on creating new content as I am going back into existing content and creating this structure, which allows me to add in keywords as I go and reformulate, maybe expand different topics. And to turn, if over the course of the year, we turn these 30 posts into 30 well-structured, keyword optimized, definitive oriented content, that traffic is going to skyrocket for them. And it'll build bit by bit over the course of the year if I'm just working on a couple posts a month in that steady step-by-step approach. So that's a huge deviation. I think a lot of people would go to that company and say, great, you have 30 blog posts, let's get that up to 60 this year.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is more of a personal question. So my company deals with authors, and we do a lot of interviews. So we do a lot of like Q&A style blog posts. And so I'm always questioning what to put the question as, because I don't want to have every single thing as an H1. So like, would you have like a recommendation for like what the question, like, because I usually have like question, answer, and then there's usually like some images and more question and answer. So like, what should all of the questions be the same, or should I change out the questions as far as their titles?
So I would probably organize in two ways. One is always aim for there's not a lot of rules in SEO, but having one H1 is a pretty good standard, because your H1 is your title of the overall post. There should really be only like one thing at the top of the tree. And then everything else should branch out from there. So I'd aim for only one H1, and then I'd make all of the questions you ask be the H2s. And if all of the questions are just like, hey, I asked 5 questions, and so I have 5 H2s, that's totally fine. If sometimes your interviews are more structured in that you talk about one theme in the beginning and then another theme in the end, you may then decide to do an H2 and an H2 for the 2 themes, and then use H3s under them.
Sorry, my kid was photobombing.
No worries.
But thank you. Yeah, that helps.
Awesome. Any other questions on content while we're right here?
You mentioned, you kind of breezed through it, but you said definitive blog posts. Can you describe what you mean by that?
Yeah, so a definitive blog post to me takes on a lot of angles. So it's, let's talk about XML sitemaps. So if I'm writing a blog post about XML sitemaps, and I'm going to do them about WordPress, I could just make a blog post that is like, what is an XML sitemap for WordPress? That'd be one blog post. I could have another blog post, how to create an XML sitemap on your WordPress website. And I could have another blog post about how to submit it to the Google Search Console. So I could break this topic out into 3 different blog posts. And no one of those posts would really be your like end all be all guide to XML sitemaps for WordPress. They'd all be sort of segmented. And in a few years ago, we probably would have taken that segmented approach because Google really resonated with frequency of posts. And so I would have taken a topic, broken it into 3 sections, and then posted 1 a week for 3 weeks. And I would have gotten that kind of recency and that constant little like bump up from being a regular blogger that we saw in the algorithm. But then the internet became super bloated, right? We were all creating like lots of thin content, and we ended up with all sorts of duplicates. Like on one of our clients' websites, we created like 7 different ways to explain how to keep a certain kind of predator away from a garden, right? Like we blogged 20 different ways about the same topic over the course of 10 years. And then Google's like, which one do I show? And so you're better off, when I think about definitive content, you're better off really packing a punch. So taking that content, it could mean combining 3 old posts into one. Or if you're writing something from square one that you've never written about, it can oftentimes mean taking a deep dive. And so whenever I'm about to write a blog post, for myself or for a client, I go to see if I had written about the topic before, like 5 years ago. And even if I scratched the surface, I'll probably look at that content and have that like, I don't want to see this. I can't believe I published that. But then I'm like, okay, go back to the beginning. All I did was talk about the what in this post. Now I'm going to add in the how, and I'm going to refresh this. And so I might just build on something I have and turn it into that definitive content.
Yeah, that's what we've done so far. That's kind of our goal for 2021 with our clients, is doing a content audit and going through like years of blog posts that, like you said, 250 words, real short, very thin. And we either expanding on it and just getting it larger to that 1,500 word mark, or we're just deleting it completely because we noticed from the content audit that there's no traffic whatsoever to it. So we either abandon it, let it go, because I think and tell me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is just Google's just looking for really, really good, deep content that answers the question. And I get people asking me, how long should my blog post be? I'm like, as long as it takes to answer the question.
I mean, if you wrote the beginner's guide to WordPress, that's a much bigger topic than if you were writing how to make an XML sitemap for WordPress. And so what you're talking about is awesome. And the tool that we like to use there, it's free, is the Google Search Console, because you can go in and you can actually see, this is a post and this is the current keywords that are ranking for it and generating visibility and the kind of current rank and the search volume. And you'll come out with a different conclusion on every one, like scrap this, expand it, move it in a slightly different direction, like it's on the map for a keyword that we didn't even really have on our radar at the time. And so when you do those content audits, that tool is just a really great one to go in and say, well, how is this piece of content doing and for what keywords? And then that informs, hey, what should I do with it next? Awesome. So for any of us who have worked on a website where, you've had that experience, you've built a great website, you launched it, and then you thought the people would follow. And then you find out that, wait a second, Google, it's like not even on the map on Google. So this is when you're designing like a brand new website for a business, launching your first ever website on a domain. And the reason that happens is really because the domain and the website, it lacks authority. So Google's like, great, you have the best website out there that says you're a sushi restaurant in Denver, Colorado. But actually, like, is anyone else out there talking about this business online that could give it some credibility? And so Google and the other search engines, they look at your backlink network as a proxy for understanding your business's authority in a space. And this is all under the umbrella of offsite SEO. This is all the stuff, your authority is really built via all of the activities you take outside of your website that kind of pass value back to your website. And that's backlinks, local search, and social media. And backlinks really are just like votes of endorsement from one website to another in really simplistic terms. And when we think about a business that has a good backlink network, we really think about it as like the business's neighborhood that they're hanging out in. And so Google's looking at your backlink network to try to kind of understand, like, okay, where is this website? Where is this website's authority in time and space on the web? And when we all think about the idea of trying to get links to our website or to our clients' websites, we usually are sort of overwhelmed with the concept of spammy emails that we all get, saying like, hey, I read this and I was wondering, would you add in a sentence that said this and linked to my website? And it's like, no, actually, I'm not going to do that. And so we all get those emails, and link building can be pretty spammy. There are a lot of paid solutions. And at the end of the day, my suggestion for 2021 is to focus on the real world. And when I think about this, I think about coaching businesses to take the real world partnerships that they have out there. It's not who your customers are, it's who you collaborate with out in the real world industry space, and to say, does Google have any idea about these real world partnerships that I have? Are they echoed on the internet? And so, I'll talk to a local realtor who wants to know why, even though they sold the most real estate last year, their website's ranked number 10 for a keyword. And it's like, great, you have a good website, you have good content. And I get that in the real world, you're kind of a big shot, right? Like you're like a leader in the space. I get that. And it feels very unfair to you that on Google, you're number 10, when you think in the real world, you're number 1. And so there's this gap for that person, for that business, in understanding that Google doesn't know how many dollars of real estate you sold or how many awesome people you do business with. What Google sees is a newspaper article about the real estate market that quoted your competitor and had a link to the competitor's website. So somebody else got some nice press. Google sees the local chamber of commerce and who's listed as a realtor under that chamber of commerce listing. And that's how they're gathering their information about authority. And so when I think about real world partnerships, there's usually a lot of low hanging fruit that businesses are leaving on the table by not modeling the real world in their backlink network. And for local businesses, the bar is not super high. You only need as much authority as like the space you're playing in. An interior designer in Houston doesn't need the same authority as a newspaper like the New York Times, right? They're on 2 different playing fields in terms of authority. So that interior designer in a local marketplace needs to focus on their own kind of space, things like being listed in the Chamber of Commerce, their local partnerships, like an interior designer probably partners with contractors and architects and maybe landscape designers. And so they're in a network of adjacent businesses. They're not competitive with those folks. They collaborate with them. And so they could have a partners page. They also might be charitable with local nonprofits, or people on their team might actually, be on a board of directors somewhere. And those are all places where if your CEO is on a board of director of a local nonprofit, then there's probably a little bio about that person, and it should really link back to that local business website. And oftentimes this type of link building is sufficient for a local business to play in their space and to create the type of authority they're looking for. If you're on a national level, you're gonna have to start sharing your expertise to a larger audience. And that's where we start to think about a little bit more in like the PR tactics world, talking about being on podcasts, offering to work, create guest blog posts, webinars, sponsoring events. These types of activities are going to help on a national level. And of course, a local business can get involved in these national level tactics. It's just not where I start with a local business. And so, that's really the natural way to grow your authority long-term over time. And I bring this up as a tip to you of leveraging real world relationships, because here we are. It's a Wednesday night, and you guys are part of a vibrant community of fellow WordPressers. And so here you are, and there's probably the opportunity within your own network right here in this meetup group to create partnerships online that Google sees how different businesses might interact. So find a friend in the space where you don't compete, you have an adjacent expertise or something, like you do SEO and I do SEM, I do the paid side, or you're an email marketing person and I love social media. And trade some content with each other and start to get some natural authority and link building going out there through real world marketing techniques.
How about this? Be a speaker on a meetup and get your link from the meetup as well as YouTube.
There we go. We've got a pitch. And that is, those links, they play a ton of long-term value for your business. The last topic we want to talk about is that third sphere, and that is building trust. And so in the world of SEO, reviews matter. And so when you look at a search result like this around a local business, it's hard not to notice in the ranked results here that the one at the top has the highest quality reviews, so they're at 4.7, and has the highest volume of reviews in a space. And that doesn't mean Google is only sensitive to reviews in Google Maps and in this local 3-pack is what we call it. But instead, it just means it's a highly correlated factor with rank in the local keyword space that people play in. It also heavily influences people's decisions around what business to go to, right? So you see a restaurant with 3-star review and a restaurant with a 4.5-star review. And even my 7-year-old, who did a voice search into my phone can tell me, hey, mom, this place looks better than this other place. And I don't, he can barely read. So the stars make a pretty big, differentiator. and people's decisions, including Google's. But it's not just reviews of, it's not just really reviews on local businesses in Google Maps. You can have reviews be really important to different businesses in all sorts of space. In the software space, we look at reviews when we decide. We look at plugin installs, you know, when we're deciding between two plugins in the WordPress repo and things like that. And so we're always looking for these quantitative ways to get a quick picture of how two different businesses, two different websites measure up. And so too is Google. And so the first piece of the puzzle with generating new reviews is deciding like where your reviews are going to be impactful. So we talked about like, how do I dedicate, you know, my time and effort to getting impactful results, not just doing SEO and say, I spent an hour working on this. Like, how do I actually get the most bang for my buck out of an hour of time? And so the first way is to figure out where you need to play. For some businesses, it could be as simple as Google Maps and Facebook reviews. For other businesses, there might be more review platforms that are important, but again, you're looking for depth and quality more than breadth. So just because you could get more reviews on Yelp or something like that, it still is probably, if you had to pick one review on Google Maps versus one review on Yelp, you're probably going to pick Google Maps because it's so heavily correlated with Google. And then the piece where everybody forgets about where you need reviews are on your own website. And when you curate those reviews, I think of them as testimonials. They still carry value. And when you use, you know, the ability for someone to leave a review on, say, a product, that's more like a comment. Anyone can populate that information out on the web. Then that's another type of review portal. But the first strategy is basically to know that reviews matter, figure out where you want more reviews, and then it's as simple as asking for feedback. Notice I didn't say here, go ask for reviews, because usually when someone asks me for a review, I kind of freeze up a little bit. Like, ooh, if my hairdresser asked for a review, I think I would write something like, had a great haircut, 2 thumbs up, or something like that, right? But if instead if she sent me a quick text and the text said something like, hey, I'm really trying to improve my services this year. I was wondering if you could give me a little bit of feedback. I've got this form and I'd love for you to fill it out. It's anonymous if you want it to be. And I'd love you, to just answer 3 questions. And she asked me like 3 pointed questions. I'd probably write something that actually read really well because I was giving honest feedback. And then that person can turn around and say, oh, thank you so much for the feedback. Would you mind if I turn this into a testimonial and then add that as a testimonial? Or, hey, thanks for the feedback. Would you be able to pop over to Google Maps with this link and echo similar sentiments there? And so your best reviews sometimes come when someone doesn't feel under the gun on actually leaving a review on a third-party party. It comes from that natural feedback. At the end of a project, at the end of a customer relationship, or even somewhere along the way. So today we've talked about kind of 3 things that you can do over time to steadily grow your traffic. And so that's structured content, building your authority with really high quality real world links, and getting more reviews online. This process-based approach is sort of what we're all about at Pathfinder SEO. Where we bring in process, SEO tools that you get in other softwares like keyword research and rankings, and then resources. And we really call that taking a guided approach to SEO. It's a little bit different than a lot of the SEO softwares that are out there because it pushes so heavily on the process and the coaching side. So my contact information is here. I know I've talked probably a little too quickly. If you have questions or anything, don't hesitate to reach out over email. There's a coupon code in here as well. And then I'll share slides with you guys. You're always welcome to get back in these slide decks and look at any screenshots you need.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. If anyone's got any questions, feel free just to jump on in. You don't need to raise hands or anything. Just start talking. It's all good.
You think there's any impact of WordPress moving to block editors?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I haven't actually personally studied that. I haven't noticed any correlations in the sites that I'm working on. So I can't totally answer that. But it would be an interesting topic to research and do some more experiments with. I think The one thing I will say is people tend to put a little bit too much weight sometimes behind the infrastructure and not enough on the final product. And so at the end of the day, WordPress is my favorite content management system for SEO. And that's because I think it lends itself to great user experience, ease of publishing of content. The plugins are super robust. What you can do with the plugin landscape in WordPress is better than really anything in terms of the SEO world else out there. But at the same point, I'll watch a website, you know, that was built in WordPress and had a lot of traffic get rebuilt in Squarespace, and all the content moves and the user experience is still good, and like people will throw up hands about maybe a little bit of speed or a little bit of other things in the back end. I'm like, the search engines like it just as much. And so, yeah, I think sometimes a little too much weight gets placed on the infrastructure and not enough on like the quality of what you're building and the final product, that user experience.
I'm curious about the categories. Oh, sorry. Are you saying that we should have a page for our categories?
Each category is essentially on your website creates a page, like you get a category archive. So It creates a URL for each category, and you have to decide if you want the search engines to crawl and index those category pages. And so if you have a website that, you know, I'm generally a fan of having my category pages crawled and indexed by the search engines because I'm purposeful about how many categories I have, what they are, and what's in each one, and what the layout looks like. So if you put effort to your category pages, then they're 2 thumbs up. If your category pages, like we'll come into sites in WordPress, they've got 200 categories. Some of them are like the plural and the singular. So, you know, or it'll be like hosting and website hosting, right? So I'm like, well, what's the difference between hosting and website hosting in terms of categorization? People are like, oh, there's not really a difference. So that should be one category. So it's all about, if you're purposeful, your categories are super rich and valuable. But if you're sloppy with categories, they become thin, overlapping, duplicate, and they need a cleanup because every one of those category pages is getting indexed by the search engines if you let them in there.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I have a site that's a modest photography website, and she's not really so keen on blog articles. So I don't see the content changing much, except I guess when she adds a new photograph and it's like landscape photography. So how do you deal with a site where the content, where the client isn't keen on making a blog, you know, blog articles? Should I persuade them to make blog articles 1 or 2 a month, or how do you deal with a more static type site, a site that doesn't change content or update it so much?
That's a great question. So not everybody has to blog to do well in SEO, right? Think about your local dentist office, right? Do you read their blog on a regular basis? Do you think their blog influences a customer that was referred to them actually becoming a customer? Probably not, right? Blogging about dentistry does not enhance necessarily their local expertise to a level where they're going to drive considerable amount more traffic. And so the same can be true for potentially a photographer, right? Where blogging just doesn't really make sense for their business. And so in that case, it's like, okay, great. We very often don't have to blog. So that's awesome. So what do we have to do and with our content? How do we evolve our content to keep it fresh and up to date? And so usually when I look at a photographer's website from an SEO standpoint, I find a lot of images and not a lot of text. A lot of times everything is an image except for the artist's statement, and they put that on their about page, right? And so your coaching on content is going to often be about getting other content blocks into other pages. So if they have 4 categories of, I have landscape, I have wedding photography, I have family photography, etc., then you're going to make them write a paragraph or 2 of content to go into each of those category pages where it's mostly about images. But we want them to write about, I love being a wedding photographer because I get to share in this joyous day. Like, it can even be from a first party perspective. It doesn't have to be, here's how to be a wedding photographer. It can be, I've been a wedding photographer for 20 years and it's my end all be all favorite, whatever it might be. That type of content is probably the content you need to encourage the development of. You probably need to encourage them to take the great feedback they get and add it as testimonials, right? Like every one of the pages should have a story on it told by a third party. The wedding
So
page.
you mean every page with its own photo should have?
Not every photo, but like every category. So if
Category,
it's
okay.
landscape and wedding, and then you have a contact page and you have a home page, all 4 of those pages should have some testimonials on it. Ideally, testimonials of whatever it is. So contact might be kind of general. Landscape might be, you know, I purchased this landscape photography, you know, and it's my favorite thing over my mantle type, you know, testimonial. And so it's helping your client evolve in that space. That's going to help them share their expertise. And a lot of times clients actually need that coaching. We work with so many clients that don't put testimonials, don't write interior designers that do homes in commercial, and they don't have any content on those 2 landing pages. They just have their amazing product, their visual product.
Well, you need to find, I mean, basically you need to find a way to have words accompany an image.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And they don't have to write about every image or write about every project. They need to write about the core components of their business.
Isn't that isn't that like part of the formatting of the pictures though? Like the alt text and the description and the caption?
That helps too. You definitely need the alt text, but it's just a tiny piece of the puzzle. First of all, it's not publicly facing. So Google knows that you could spam it, right? You could say this is a picture of a cat when it's a picture of a dog, like nothing's totally stopping you. And so it's part of the equation. But that rich content and also in these spaces, what I'll tell you is the competition is so low, right? So you go and you look at the 5 photographers they're competing with and you're like, oh, same problem, no content. So you don't need 2,000 words of content. Like 20 words of content could make you the best content producer in a keyword space, depending on what the competition looks like. So let's not do 20 words of content because that's a little light, but you know, let's talk about the value of adding just a couple paragraphs. I often get people in these spaces to write a lot about their process. So people that are I mean, just what's your process? If you're an interior designer, if you're a photographer, that can be a really good thing. I wouldn't mind reading really about a dentist office process, like not just you come in for a cleaning every 6 months, but like how do you approach dentistry in general? Like, you know, we do an evaluation and then we see you and how that all goes.
The other thing I noticed that photographers, dentists, they all miss those service pages. You know, so if you're a photographer, you would want to have a service page with good content, really great photos, nice and full of wedding, what it's like to take pictures of a wedding and all the different types of weddings and the wedding in Houston. And here's the weddings that I did for this couple, right? And then there's another one for, you could have a whole landing page for people that do headshots, corporate headshots, and a landing page with lots and lots of content, Houston corporate headshots, because that's what I would be searching for is corporate web shots. But when we have photographers, they love their photos so much, as they should, but they forget to write about it in the sense of what our customers looking for.
I work with authors and my problem is they don't want to reuse words. And when you're using
That's not the
keywords,
web.
right, you have to, with keywords, you have to reuse them. And
yeah, you don't want to spam it, but you at least want to have, and this is Pathfinder's coming into my head telling me this stuff too. You know, you want the heading, you want a couple H2s in there, you want some text in there, some bullets, some FAQs with that key phrase. You're not throwing everything in there, but yeah, you're going to have to repeat the key phrase a few times.
Yeah, no, they want to be more creative each and every time, and I'm like that. You'll never get found. We just need to call you a YA author and go with that. We'll stop there.
And really repurposing content. Your authors are really good at creating content. So for them, rewriting content is like they enjoy that process.
Well,
everybody else.
When I have them rewrite stuff for SEO, they kind of get upset with me because the problem is that they tend to, it's creative, but they kind of miss out on the foundations and the pillars. Getting them to actually state what they're doing instead of an imaginary version of what they want to do. You know, like, I just need you to say, I sell my books on Amazon. You know, like, instead of my books are available worldwide. I mean, like that worldwide becomes your keyword instead of just saying Amazon. If you're trying to shove everybody to your book on Amazon, you got to just say Amazon. So getting them to be more plain spoken tends to be difficult.
Especially creative writers and nonfiction, and yeah, they want to, yeah.
They're as bad as photographers. The photographer, yeah.
One thing that I've learned, and again, this is Pathfinder, is go find out the competitors and look and see what, if you search, you know, young authors, whatever, what shows up on that first page, and show them, see, this is on the first page. Notice how they've written this. If you want to do this, this is what we have to do. And that usually kind of opens their eyes, like,
Yeah, it's a really good, and we didn't talk about that. So we kind of give you a lens to think about SEO: expertise, authority, and trust, right? You can think about this as having a tip under each one of these things, different focus areas under each one of these things. But one of the really powerful ways that you can communicate with other people about why somebody else is getting traffic in a space and you're not, so basically an audit or a comparison, is to give a sense. I'll just quickly say, okay, here's this business and here's your business. And where is it that this other business is doing better? Is it expertise, authority, or trust? So sometimes we find, and this is the most frustrating for clients because they can see it really loud and clear. My content is 2,000 words and awesome. Their content is 500 words and not so awesome. And they're ranked number 1 and I'm ranked number 10, right? Like, I can't understand it. You told me content was the name of the game. I delivered content and I'm not winning the game, right? Like, how much more frustrating could that be? And so you, as a somebody helping them understand the landscape, and you're probably saying the same thing a little bit, right? Like, oh, geez, I can't believe we published that and it's not doing better. So then you have to go back and say, okay, I'm going to go and look at the big picture. Let's look at authority, because wow, turns out authority is like 40% of the algorithm, right? So if one business has great content and they won't do back, like they won't focus about their online authority, they're not going to do great in SEO. And so you got to always be pushing people. Usually it's our area of weakness that we don't want to work on, right? So I'm really comfortable writing content. I don't like, you know, the PR piece, the authority building piece. So my content is going to be stronger than my authority. And if you're helping somebody along, you need to be that sort of squeaky wheel. Like, I really know you don't like the idea of a bad Google review. And so you have 0 reviews because you don't ask anyone for feedback, but like, you've been in business 20 years, you know, we need some online reviews. And you can say that to somebody month over month over month, because it's their pain point, and that's really where they need to focus. So you can use that lens essentially to audit and understand why somebody is doing well in a space, because it's not always content.
Wow. Okay.
A diversion.
We tend to write for our clients. We don't, it's too overwhelming for them, and they get bogged down in not knowing what to say it, how to structure it. And I think the other thing I've learned with SEO is it's a constant iteration, constant. You might put a piece of content out there, and to, you know, a month from now, you're going to get some stats back and you go, you know, I think that's what I find out when I work with Pathfinder is, all right, well, now let's add a stack of FAQs at the bottom of it. You know, after we just wrote like 1,500 words and really jam-packed it, really good stuff. And then all of a sudden, now let's add some FAQs. And it's just a constant changing and tweaking. And, you know, every month you just have to constantly look at your site, look at your content, and even old content, you know, like you were saying, just revising it, revamping it. I sometimes go back and I change the date. Like, oh, look, new blog post.
Yeah, you can tweak small stuff and send it live. Yeah, and that is the challenge with SEO, is that you can't set it aside and move on from it. And that dynamic is hard. It's a lot like fitness. So, and we always think of Pathfinder as a lot like a gym membership with a personal trainer. You can heavy lift things in the beginning, like really get your fitness going, but you're going to need to do maintenance. You're going to need to evolve over time. And sometimes having a coach can be helpful, because it can be hard to get back in the gym when you feel like, I've been doing this for like 2 months. I kind of want to take a break. And you're like, oh, and then you go to the trainer and you get the high fives and all the good news in the beginning and at the end. And then in the middle, they're kind of on you, right? Like, they're like, you really need to, let's work harder here or whatever. And it's the same thing that if we're offering professional services, we're often doing with our clients, is kind of like helping them celebrate the wins. And then circle back and evolve on, hey, you remember we said we were gonna roll out a blog on your website when we designed it, and here we are 6 months later, and we never rolled that blog out. You know, we really need to get on that. All your competitors blog. It's the same game.
Yeah, I'll find out when I hop on with Eric. It's embarrassing because I'm like, I didn't do it. Sorry, Eric, I didn't do half the stuff you told me to do. That's just like a trainer. Like, no, I didn't do those sit-ups this past week. You know,
It is a
sorry.
little bit like it.
And it shows.
We work with business coach, a business coach too, and it's the same thing. Like my coaching session's on Friday morning, and guess what I'm doing tomorrow? Getting
Yeah.
ready because I have a deadline.
That's right. That's right. Well, this has been really great. So very helpful, Lindsay. Thank you so much. Anyone have any other questions? No. Usually about this point, we kind of answer any other WordPress questions. Lindsay, you don't have to stick around. You're more than welcome to hang out. But if you got to go, I get it. Got kids and stuff. So
I'll hang for a few minutes, but my brother's watching my kids, and that's not a
yeah,
good story.
no,
So I
really,
can't stay for too long.
yeah, it's totally fine if you need to go. No worries.
No, I'd love to hear. I can learn. I'm not a WordPress expert. I'm more on the SEO side, so I always learn in these meetups.
Awesome.
Well, thank you
Anyone-
all, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, thanks. Anyone have any questions about a WordPress site? Anyone got any issues or something that you want to discuss that you're stuck on WordPress? That we've got the collective here, so we can all kind of help answer anything. Didn't have to be SEO related. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Recently, DuckDuckGo crossed 100 million. Can't remember what it was. 100 million anyway. So Lindsay's focused a lot on Google, rightly so. But what about DuckDuckGo?
So here's the thing about DuckDuckGo. They're actually using Google to return the results. They're just doing it without tracking you.
I did not know that.
That explains a lot.
What does that mean? They use Google to return results.
So
What do you mean?
they're interfacing with Google's data, and they're actually doing a Google search for you, but their claim to fame is that they don't track you, because every time you do a search with Google,
Yes. I use DuckDuckGo for that very reason. Even though I like tracking people on my end, I don't like to be tracked. And so I do use DuckDuckGo for that very reason. So I'm curious that's interesting.
Yeah, Google's obviously the king of they have everybody's content. The only one that has more content is Amazon. They just don't have a search engine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I helped install an Echo today. They're using that to build their collection. We had the conversation on an event yesterday that somebody asked, well, every time I do a search for my business, I always come up as #1 on Google, but for everybody else, they can't find me. Because Google, when you're logged in, collects that information and trains the AI to what you want to search for.
Right.
Hopefully that
Google
helps.
Search Console is really helpful for the client that searches for their business like 1,000 times and so sees totally different results than the average person. And so, yeah, screenshotting or not screenshots are just doing like live Zoom call where you can show them, hey, this is the average data. It says average position on Google. You can't really argue with that versus the screenshot they're sending you that shows something wonky because of their own user behavior.
Well, and what I usually tell people, open up a brand new browser, incognito window, don't sign into anything, then do your search. They're unhappy with the results, but at least they're honest results.
I always have to tell my authors too, because they tend to search themselves a lot. And so they think people can find them. And I was like, search your book title and put it in like you can't spell it. And that usually freaks them out because they're like, I can't find me. I'm like, well, it means you don't have any.
I'm trying to find where it says that DuckDuckGo uses Google's engine. I'm not seeing that anywhere.
I hadn't heard that either, and I thought they piggyback off multiple different engines.
Yeah.
And then
They may
claim to fame
now.
is
They
privacy.
used to use Google.
I
Yeah.
think you're right, Lindsay. I think they do grab from other search engines as
Grab
well.
from
That's
Wiki and a bunch of places.
It's like
they
the
also
algorithm on an algorithm almost. Like they grab from the different algorithms and then they have their own calculation using all of the other things. So I don't think they're powered necessarily 100% by their own algorithm and their own technology. Like Bing and Google have their own proprietary algorithms, but they're definitely piggybacking off of it. And maybe at time they use just Google, and then now they've gotten more.
Yeah, and they also claim that they don't track anything. They have been caught on more than one occasion tracking you.
Well, apparently they don't store IP addresses or user information. They might be tracking you, but they're not storing anything.
Well, see, and that's where they got caught. Is they actually were. It was at least a year ago though. I still use DuckDuckGo.
Honestly, I don't trust any of them. They're all tracking you. Hate to tell you, but otherwise, but the thing is, with any of these search engines, in order for them to improve, they have to track something. They have to track something. Otherwise, they can't tell if the results are giving them the kind of the results that they should be giving. You know, the whole.
No,
thing
you're
about-
right, Christina, because I find, I use DuckDuckGo for that reason, but I find that it's not as good as Google. I have to work harder to find the things that I immediately want because I'm used to Google just giving me exactly what I want because they've tracked every single.
Yeah, I
So,
think there's a
but
trade-off.
I think it's worth it. And you're right. I think they're all tracking us, but I'd at least like to go with one that doesn't just flat out come out and say, yeah, we're tracking you and everything you do. So it's the lesser of all the evils, I guess.
Agreed. Any other issues with WordPress? Anything that you guys are stuck on? A WooCommerce, a blog post, a menu, anything? We're going to try and have open mic nights once a month. So that kind of no speaker, but just an hour of just fixing people's problems. I think that
I'm
was
still stuck on my membership problem, but I haven't worked on it lately.
Well, come back to open mic night. Let's open that.
I was going to wait for that because it's not a little tiny problem. Like I'm trying to merge I have a membership plugin on top of WooCommerce, on top of there's another plugin there, and they say they all work together, but they're driving me crazy.
So I'm going to tell you to join Woo Wednesdays, WooCommerce, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It was 2:00 this afternoon, Dallas time, Houston time. And they do, we've got Jonathan Wold, who's actually a WooCommerce employee. That's a good one. Also check out the WooCommerce events out of Seattle. If you're familiar with Bob WP.
Are they on Meets or is this like a Facebook thing?
They're meetup groups.
Meetup groups. Okay.
Yeah. And Bob
Austin has a
WP actually
WooCommerce
runs a
group
meetup
too.
group out of Seattle.
Yeah, Austin is a WordPress, a WooCommerce meetup group as well. If you want to, yeah, I would go on Meetup. That's a really great idea.
Okay.
The other thing I can do is I'm on the board of the Houston IMA, and so we built a WordPress site membership in WooCommerce, and I can give you my stack of what we did to build it out. Events as well, events, membership.
Oh, that's what the problem is. See, I have food tickets. I forgot about that. That's the membership. I have food tickets with the ultimate membership plugin with WooCommerce, and
you're working too hard.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't use event calendar, I think, and it all works really well. So
yeah, I'm using the events calendar for Modern Tribe.
Well, we sell tickets, but the problem is when we sell tickets, it's for small events. They're not for big events. And so other things, they cut into our profit margins. So I needed something I could sell tickets for small events for. That's how I ended up at food tickets. But you have to buy the license every year. So it's kind of defeating the purpose.
I've been using Modern Tribe, the events calendar.
That's what we use.
And with event tickets, and I've been happy.
I'll look into those.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for hanging out. Good to see everybody. And if you guys don't have any questions, we can see.
Well, I've got one. If we've got anybody that's really likes funky stuff, I am trying to remove. So I'm a Genesis user, and and I've got a site with Navigation Pro for one of my clients, and I am trying to remove the ability to select font colors inside the block editor.
What? Font colors?
Font colors, yeah, so that they because they've got a nasty habit of going in and changing the fonts to strange fonts and strange colors. And then they redesign their site and they pick all new colors, and then all their posts have to be edited to fix all those weird colors that they hard coded.
Yeah.
I've got a plugin that does it, but Navigation Pro adds in some extra color options, and I want to remove that.
Can you, one, you could probably drive in the function file and put some script in there. But the other is, can you also set up their user account that they only can do certain things? Have you tried that?
User account does not allow me to control the block editor.
Okay.
And I've got a plugin, and I'll throw the link up there. It's a nifty little plugin.
Yeah.
And it works for everything except when the theme adds in color support. So when the theme adds in, here's the plugin. But when the theme calls out support specifically for, and I'm pulling it.
Yeah, I'm going to throw this in the chat. I just found this in WordPress core for you. Hold on.
When it does add theme support for the edit color palette, that's when I run into issues because Navigation Pro adds that.
Yeah, I don't know. That just says controlling the block editor. I haven't seen exactly what it can do, but you might check and see if there's some areas in there that you can just block certain parts of what you can do with a block editor. I don't know.
Yeah, and that plugin that I threw up there, the MRW, that actually takes care of most of this. It's this one piece that my theme adds back in, and I found the issue while we were on the call tonight, so I haven't actually spent any time trying to fix it yet.
That's all I can think of.
I'll try it.
In that link that you.
Okay, I can't find that plugin you guys mentioned. I found the events calendar, but what the one you said you were mixing it with was the
event tickets.
Event tickets.
Eric, on that colors, if you go to that link that Christine put in, there's a section where it says colors. Several blocks offer color customization. Developers can customize the default color palette to provide a consistent color across the website. So there may be some opportunity.
I am coming. I know I shouldn't have told them they can have ice cream.
But there may be some clues as to when you could limit their color selections.
Oh, actually, the disable this actually should solve the problem right here. This piece, it's right there in the documentation.
There you go. Disable colors. Woo-hoo.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. There you go.
Good. That saved me an hour of Googling.
It's funny just being about Googling. It's just who has the Googling options in there. Awesome. Oh, cool. Anyone else? If not, we're gonna shut it down and see you guys next month. I don't know what's for next month. Oh, guys, fill out that form, that survey link. Speaking of topics, do me a favor and just take a second, honestly, 20 seconds to fill it out. Next month, it is, like I said, I'm trying to open my brain's dead now. I'm done. Open mic night, but I don't want to be running it every time. So I need Rick or Mike or someone to maybe host it next time.
Wait, when's next? Is it in February?
Yeah, I haven't put it in yet. So my thought was one of the days will be open mic night. Another one will be a speaker.
Okay.
What night in February?
I'd love to run an open mic night, but I need to know when.
Yeah, well, I was thinking just keeping it on Wednesdays, and it would be like the Wednesday before the speakers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because just so you guys know, John is no longer running the Houston WordPress meetups. He's moved on to greater pastures, and doing other things now. And so it's me and Rick is in there. And I think Mike started one and Katie, but I don't know if he's going to start one in Katie right now, but we'll see. Hopefully kind of nudge him a little bit.
Yeah, I
But-
tried to start one in Cyprus, but I can't find a meeting space. So
Well, why didn't you don't need one now?
I know now I don't need one. I'm like, I should just do it online. I don't know.
Because even still, even if we do go back in person, I still feel like I'm going to do in person every other month. Because I feel like I can get really different speakers. Like, Lindsay's in Colorado, like she's never going to come down here. So this gives me that opportunity to mix and match different local speakers as well as national speakers. And then people that live out in Timbuktu, wherever.
Don't limit it to just people here in the States. I spoke to Cambridge, England the other day.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. It's just, that's where, well, I know, I take that back. I know a bunch of folks in England that could probably hop on here, but the time zone.
And I went to the London event, the London WooCommerce event, and we had I forget, Rodolfo, who does Business Bloomer. And he's actually based in Sicily. And he spoke to the London event. Now that was 7:00 our time, AM.
Yeah, the
So
time
it
zone's a
was
bit
a little
tough.
early.
Just so you guys know, Friday is WordFest Live 2021. So I highly recommend checking it out. It's an all-day Friday event, which I'll be attending. There's all different types of people that are going to be there. So, but yeah. Anyway, we're working hard for you guys, making sure you guys are supported with WordPress. So again, fill out the survey, keep going to the Facebook group, keep asking questions in there. I'm noticing there's a lot more activity, which is great. People helping each other out, which I'm so happy to see. But thanks everyone for showing up. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Thanks so much.
Bye.